Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Turn it on. Up. Gopi Janam Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Rudikacharya Ashtotar to Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvajikacharya Ashtotar to Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavanda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. So, for those who were here in Mangalartik, or who are listening at Mangalartik, today is indeed Ekadashi, but it's not the disappearance day of Gorkishore Das Babaji. That's in 2 weeks exactly, the next Ekadashi. Okay. Narayam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devin Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam, and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 11th day of November 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 4, the creation of the fourth order. chapter 28, beginning chapter 28, Puranjan becomes a woman in the next life. Text number 1. Narada Hovacha Sainika Bhayanamno Ye Barhishman Dishtakarinaha Pradvar Kala Kanyabhyam Vicheru Ravanim Imam Narada Hovacha Sainika Bhayanamno Ye Barhishman Dishtakarinaha Pradvar Kala Kanyabhyam Vicheru Ravanim Imam Narada Hovacha Sainika Bhayanamno Ye Barhishman Dishtakarinaha Pradvar Kala Kanyabhyam Vicheru Ravanim Imam Narada Hovacha Sainika Bhayanamno Ye Barhishman Dishtakarinaha Pradvar Kala Kanyabhyam Vicheru Ravanim Imam Narada Hovacha Bhayanamno Ye Barhishman Dishtakarinaha Pradvar Kala Kanyabhyam Vicheru Ravanim Imam Narada Hovacha Sainika Bhayanamno Ye Barhishman Dishtakarinaha Pradvar Kala Kanyabhyam Ladies? Narada Hovacha Sainika Bhayanamno Ye Barhishman Dishtakarinaha Pradvar Kala Kanyabhyam Vicheru Ravanim Imam Narada Hovacha. The great sage Narada continued to speak. Sainikaha, the soldiers, Bhayanamaha, of Bhaya, fear. Yea, all of them who? Barhishman, O King Prachina Barhishat, Dishtakarinaha, the order carriers of death, Prajvara, with Prajvara, Kalakanyabhyam, and with Kalakanya, Vicheru, traveled, Avanim, on earth, Imam, this. Translation. The great sage Narada continued, My dear King Prachina Barhishat, afterward the king of the Yavanas, whose name is fear itself, as well as Prajvara, Kalakanya, and his soldiers, began to travel all over the world. Purport. The period of life just prior to death is certainly very dangerous because usually at this time people are attacked by the weakness of old age as well as many kinds of disease. The diseases that attack the body are compared here to soldiers. These soldiers are not ordinary soldiers, for they are guided by the king of the Yavanas, who acts as their commander-in-chief. The word Dishtakarinaha indicates that he is their commander. When a man is young, he does not care for old age, but enjoys sex to the best of his satisfaction, not knowing that at the end of life, his sexual indulgence will bring on various diseases, which so much disturb the body that one will pray for immediate death. The more one enjoys sex during youth, the more he suffers in old age. Okay. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So we've been hearing this allegory, extended allegory, spoken by Narada Muni to King Prachina Barhishat. And here, Narada is continuing to describe in this chapter the attack. It's going to be very graphic, the attack of all of these soldiers. We learned in the last chapter about the king of the Yavanas, whose name is Fear itself, Kala Kanya, the daughter of time, turns out to be Jara, old age and disability. And we've got Prajvara, who was the fever that accompanies death, 170 degrees. And then there's all these soldiers who Prabhupada explains these are different kinds of diseases that attack. So you can see this is a formidable army arrayed here. And Puranjana's city is going to be attacked, the city of the body, and he's eventually going to leave his body and become a woman. That's already told in the title. So Prabhupada makes the point here that the period just before death, now, that period just before death, we don't actually know exactly when that is. Prabhupada made the point often that you don't really know who is old. Old being if someone who's near death. Children die, middle-aged people die, adolescents die, all kinds of people die. So, but the normal course of events is that one is able to make it to some kind of old age, and then you get inevitably attacked. I mean, those of us who are entering into old age know that can happen. We've got now this extraordinary pandemic where it is more dangerous and fatal for people who are old, but it's just a terrific thing. Anyone who gets it, I read yesterday like 90% of the people who get it, it doesn't mention age, end up with some kind of mental problem. Read about it. It's incredible. I mean, this thing is just right out of somebody's imagination, practically, So, the idea is that this pertains to us also. Those of you who are not old, those who are in your youth or middle age, whatever, it's pertinent for all of us. And what it's simply describing is the way the material energy is set up, and that is that you can't really be happy here. You can try and you can delude yourself into thinking you got it together. I've got good prospects and there's hope and all that. But this is all Maya's trick. It's Maya's illusion. We've come here for that very reason, to forget our actual nature as servants of Krishna and to compete with him. So this whole world is a kind of reformatory. It's known as Durga, a prison. Durga means difficult to go, impossible to get out of. That's what the name Durga means. So Durga is material energy, and it's a very intricate arrangement for giving us an opportunity. Prabhupada answers, what is the purpose of this place? It's to give us an opportunity to engage in these delusions of power and happiness here, and then to suffer, oftentimes going down into lower species and being completely oblivious of what's going on, and just coming on back up again. This is described graphically in the third canto, Kapila Muni. And then, you come to the human form of life with the greatest intelligence, all your senses are active, And if you don't have, this is a key point, if you don't get the association of someone who is, who isn't bewildered, who's enlightened, pure devotee, you're trapped here. There's no hope, And all these, this is what is the advantage there? Is that to pierce the bubble of illusion, so to speak, that we build around each other, ourselves, and then now you have to have some kind of piety or some gata sukriti in the background to be a little bit receptive to the message, or just by the force of the preaching of great souls, they break the barrier and somehow enter into your consciousness. But you need to respond to that with some receptivity, and then start asking the questions that just makes you a human being, as Prabhupada points out. In the very first purport of the first chapter, of the first verse of the first canto, Prabhupada talks about that, how it's natural for a human being to look up into the sky at night, Of course, can't be a cityscape because you won't see the stars. The idea is that you're in a country, you see the stars, and it brings some wonder to you. Where did all this come from? What is my position here? What's the meaning of all this? It's natural, unless you're completely brainwashed by modern materialistic education, to see that as a wonderful creation, and there's a creator behind it, some intelligence. So at least at that point of wonder, this is a kind of a reflection of that famous injunction in the Vedanta Sutra, first one, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now therefore, and the implication is, because the sutras, having come to the human form of life, you should inquire into Brahman, meaning, as the second sutra, where did everything come from? Janman yasya yataha. That Brahman is that which generates everything, and the Adi is, and sustains it, and finally destroys it. In other words, the absolute truth, Brahman. So even if there's some vague interest in that, that's to your great fortune, provided there is a source of knowledge that can then begin to answer your questions. So here we're seeing, this is like every man, this Puranjan. Puranjan simply means the resident of the city of the body. That means everybody. But it's especially, of course, pertinent for human beings. But the standard practice is to become enamored of the senses, and then the sex life is there, and you think you have it all together, you're enjoying, but the inevitable force and you have your defenses. The snake is here, the life air. Life air is really, they're trying to maintain the health of the body. But eventually, like any machine, it just begins to break down. And all your dreams are shattered, ultimately. And you go on to your next destination. And if you've led a completely sinful life, oftentimes, you lose the human form of life and the whole thing is postponed. So we've been doing that for millions and millions of years. So the diseases, when we talk about these four, Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, when you think about it, because we've had all these, so I've been thinking about that. The real one that's the most dangerous, that is the most frightening, is a disease. Janma, you forget. We know that we don't want to go back in the womb and suffer that. But now we've more or less forgotten it. Death, it's a one-off. Death is very painful, but it's a certain moment. Old age is not a problem unless there's disease. It's really the disease. It's the infirmity. It's the inability to do what you did yesterday even. Suddenly, I can't breathe as I used to. And suddenly, you can imagine how frightening that is. You don't have to imagine. You can easily understand it. Sometimes maybe if you spend a little bit too much time underwater, or something happened, how we take it for granted until there's some blockage. So many respiratory diseases. We have this COVID-19. Infirmities of. You saw me jumping up and down. I know. If I jump up and down, I'm going to have to pay for it. And sure enough, I started having a pain in my knee, like right after it. I used to at least wait a little while. So, you can't do what you once did. Now, if you think this life is the all in all, you can see how frightening that is, how disappointing that is. Oh, yeah, he tells a story of someone, I think, is looking out the window. He's a wealthy man. And, but he's overindulged and he's had a digestive disease. He can only eat simple gruel. Simple unspiced khichdi now. And he looks outside, and there's a man carrying, was it a big fish or something? Or something, carrying it home. A poor man, but he's going home to cook a nice meal, and he's envious. The rich man is envious of the poor guy who's healthy. Health is the greatest wealth. I think Bhakti Vinod said this is a primary thing we have to take care of, even as devotees, because the body is really paraphernalia for serving Krishna. When we realize Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam, the whole point is to serve Hari, Krishna, the master of the senses, with your senses. So if you overindulge, or you don't take care, you don't regulate your sleeping, whatever, then you get sick. Then what happens to your senses? They're able to serve Hari, And this is Krishna's paraphernalia. I've been rereading the CC, and I got to at that point where Sanatana Goswami, we heard this recently, where he came to see Lord Chaitanya, and he came through the forest, and he got some disease. There were some sores, and some fluid was coming out. We won't say what it was. We know blood came out. So he felt contaminated, And Lord Chaitanya, when he first came, he insisted on embracing him. He said, no, my Lord, please, I have all these itching sores. I don't care, I feel purified. But so Sanatana was very depressed. He thought he was offending Lord Chaitanya. So he planned, okay, I'll just throw myself under the wheels of the cart. Next Rath Yatra is coming up. And in this way I won't offend Lord Chaitanya and I'll go back to God. So Lord Chaitanya, of course, knew, being God, being omniscient, said, what are you thinking about suicide for? That body belongs to me. I have so many things I want to accomplish through that body. And we should really feel like that. That is a great honor and a blessing to be used by Krishna for some purpose, even something simple. That's the attitude of the devotee. Somehow engage me in your service. Isn't that what Prabhupada said the Hare Krishna mantra is? We should pray like that. Please engage me in your service. Well, me means the soul, but using the paraphernalia of the body. So I like to refer to this verse when I was working in Miami on the 10th Canto. We come to that special chapter. Of course, they're all special, but this is chapter 87, with the personified Vedas. I mean, the 10th Canto is the summum bonum, and there's so much wonderful Leela there. We're reading the Damodar Leela, the Rasa Leela, just happened to read them. But there's also a lot of philosophy. All these prayers, Brahma's prayers, and Nagapatnis, they come out. But this whole chapter, 87, is it's practically a work of philosophy in itself. When we started working on it, I would have access to the commentaries. Gopi Puranananda Prabhu had translated all these commentaries. And at that point, he was actually doing the whole thing. Vrindavan Maharaj gave him those last 10, 11 chapters to do on his own. Many devotees don't realize that. And this chapter 87 was such, the Vishwanath Chakravarti and others, they wrote a Mangalacharan just for that chapter, because it's a work in itself, full of so much philosophy. There's the refutation of karma mimamsa, Mayavad philosophy, so many things in there. So there's this one verse. Actually, what happened was when we came across it here, last time we went through, I've been here so long, we've been through the Bhagavatam one time, and we got to the 10th chapter, those 87, those are the longest verses in the Bhagavatam, They didn't fit on this little board. You had to really squeeze it in. No one really chanted. They have a special meter. So one of them especially stuck out for me, and this is the one I especially remember. And it deals with this whole idea of the body as paraphernalia, and what happens if you don't use your body for Krishna service. So they're praying. These are the personified Vedas, Upanishads, whatever. They're praying to Mahavishnu, and waking him up, kind of to start the creation. Tvananupatam kulai midamatma sarit priyavat. Chadatittaton muket vihite priyatmanacha. Nabadadamantaho asadupasana yatmahano. Yadunusha yabrame urubaye kusharira vitak. I forget exactly one or two words there. So notice that word urubaye. One of the soldiers is Bhaya. This is the Yavanaraj himself, right? So fear is always there. As soon as things get threatening, then fear automatically comes and it can paralyze, So that's in this verse. So first he says, Tvananupatam kolayam. It's an interesting word. Kolayam is a word for body. It's an unusual word for the body. What it means is, you research the commentators, it means that which eventually sinks back into the earth. Kolayam. Atmasurit priyavat. When one uses this body nicely for service to Krishna, then the body becomes your best friend. Atmasurit priyavat, very dear. Because it's paraphernalia. It's your agent for serving Krishna. And on your side, as a super soul, you're very happily directing that soul in how to serve and so forth, and everything is fine. But then the third line says, Nabadadamandaho. Those who don't take their pleasure in serving you. You see? And asadupasanaya means worshipping the impermanent, which is the condition of all conditioned souls. They're worshipping the body, the money, the family, the whole thing is, the tension is on that, and they're looking for those things as source of pleasure and safety. That's a form of worship. So asadupasana atmahano, which is virtual suicide for the soul. Atmahano. And what's the fate? Yadunusha yabbrame rubaye kusharira patak. Then they must continue to wander, trying to fulfill these unfulfillable desires, and taking all kinds of inauspicious bodies, because the whole thing started with how auspicious is a human form, which are full of fear, cause fear to the soul. Alas. So this is really, the commentary is very wonderful. Maybe it's one of the, I'll read that, because it's very pertinent here. So this is, the Bhagavatam is filled with verses like this and passages that kind of give the same lesson. I think we're going to read Shabde's famous verse in a couple. I looked ahead, Nayam Deho de Bahajin Loke. This is a central message that Prabhupada would preach on, is that the human form of life is very rare. Don't misuse it. Don't waste even a second. This is what is that? He says here, Turnam yatejana patejana mrityaya. This is another verse. Turna means immediately. Once understanding the mission of human life, don't delay. It reminds me of that verse about the six Goswamis. Chakva turna mashesha mandalapati shrening sadatuchavat. Because you have that inspiration to begin chanting Hare Krishna or get more involved, even surrender, and then that can go. That can be easily covered by Maya if you don't pursue it. That's why you find this verse is that about the Goswamis. They immediately left. Rupa, Sanatan, and Raghunath, especially mentioned here, pertinent to them, is that they immediately left their vast wealth and influence and their position. Raghunath Das was like a billionaire, would be today. A sole son, sole heir of a great fortune, beautiful wife, like beautiful as a heavenly damsel, But once he met Lord Chaitanya and got the blessings of Lord Nityananda, there was no stopping him, He left as soon as he could, He actually tricked his initiating spiritual master. He lied to him. Isn't that? Yadunadana. So I'm just going to Pastool, or whatever, they're going to worship the deity. I forget how it was, And he went off, So, and Rupa and Sanatan famously, right and left hand of the king, of the Nawab Hussain Shah, unlimited wealth, influence, and aristocracy, But once they met Lord Chaitanya, and he said, give it up and go to Vrindavan, that's all they thought of. Rupa Goswami cashed out, you can imagine. He had a whole boatload of gold, coins. They worth billions today, tens of billions. And divided it, gave quarter to the Brahmins and the Vaishnavas, a quarter to his, or half to the Brahmins and Vaishnavas, a quarter to his family, and then the other quarter he saved for emergencies, which he needed. And Sanatan, he also quit, basically, went home and just started reading Bhagavatam with great, learned Brahmins, until finally the king said, well, check up on him, he's been gone for a while, he's claiming he's ill. And the doctor went there and said, he's perfect health, So the Nawab comes there and said, what are you doing? I need you for this. No, I can't serve anymore. Lock him up. So they arrested him, And he bribed his way out of the jail, and he went to, see Lord Chaitanya. Eventually they both went to Vrindavan. So that idea is a turnam. Once you get that inspiration, follow it. And you'll have more and more, encouragement from Krishna within, and from the devotees from without to take it. In the old days, back in the 70s, we're all from the 70s, to join the Hare Krishnas meant basically to join a temple, move in, And it was a big decision. I remember Krishna was so kind, he took all my little props. I had a job, I had a little bank account, I had a car, I had an apartment. And I was interested in Krishna. I was chanting a few rounds a day, and doing my hatha yoga, reading I had some posters from the temple, But I wasn't ready to move in, and everything. I had my... But anyway, Krishna arranged it so that I lost the job, and I told you the story. Some of you may have heard the story, how I emptied my bank account out. At that time in New York was really a happening temple, the Brooklyn Temple at that time. New York and L.A. were the leaders. And you had all the artists there, the temple, the BBT was there, the ISKCON Press actually at that time. And you had all of these very competent people, editors, Jai Swami was there, Das Brahmajari. So I didn't know any of that, but I just went there and got interested, in Radha Govinda, and I was chanting. So, but I had my job. So then I was thinking, if I could, I was working in a hospital, if I could just work the night shift, I would have so much more time. I could drive into the temple every day or the Hatha Yoga studio. I'd have more time, into New York. I was living online. So the next day, I look back on it and I say, well, this is Krishna's arrangement. There was a little notice, clipping from a paper. They had a job, a night shift job for what I was doing, which is inhalation therapy, giving the oxygen, at a hospital that was like 1/5 of the distance from where I was driving. I had to drive a good half hour to get to the North Shore. This was right next to where I was living. So I didn't say it was Krishna's arrangement. I said, this is my really good luck here, you see, this is happening. So let me take this job. So I quit this job, the first job, and I got a good review. I'd been there over a year, and they gave me a good recommendation. So I got the second job. All right, so now I'm just driving 2 minutes to work, and I'm being trained up into a much smaller hospital with less work to give people oxygen and do whatever I did, inhalation. So after a week of training, day shift, they put me, okay, now you take over the night shift. Just one guy, So first of all, there's hardly anything to do. I mean, most of the patients are asleep, and there's just a half dozen of them anyway. Small hospital. And then I'd been doing all this Hatha Yoga and, eating raw food and everything. So I was a little sensitive, and I got this, in this hospital, people die, and they still haunt it. So I had nothing to do, no one to talk to. I wasn't, about to chant the whole night. I wasn't at that point. And so I said, I can't do this, this is... So I quit after 1 week. Now I had no job. And before that happened, the New York temple was trying to move from the Brooklyn house. It was a small, relatively small place, but they had like 100 people trying to live in there. And so for years they were collecting money and, and trying to buy a place in Manhattan. I heard much later that they had collected $150,000, and Prabhupada told them, oh great, now let me have all the money, and I'm going to buy do this thing in Bombay. I'm going to help build the temple. I think he just got the land, So the devotees were happy to do that, and they kept collecting. So I think they may have told, there were a lot of brahmacharinis there and everything, and young guys like me would come, and they say, well, if you find out a guy who has a job, kind of focus on him, see if you get a donation. So I'm taking halva one night. I was addicted to halva by that time, Sunday night. And this one very wonderful devotee named Mahara, who was, empowered book distributor and everything. He was right in front of me, and she knew that I was reading the book. She said, well, everything belongs to him, right? Everything belongs to Krishna. I said, yeah, I know. So I didn't give a donation. But next time I'm chanting Hare Krishna, in front of my poster there of the Super Soul, the big Super Soul painting, I'm getting this message right from the Super Soul. He said, well, yes, it all belongs to me. It all belongs to me. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So I went to my bank account and cleared out my little $1,500, which you could multiply by 4. This is 1972. And gave it to the temple. I became Kirtiraj's best friend after that. Some of you may know Kirtiraj. Anyway, that was it. I didn't have a job, didn't have a bank account. It's in this little apartment. Goodbye. But it was such a blessing. I was into it because I was really into chanting. And the Hatha Yoga studios, you chant a little bit and you have to stop. But here was a place, the more you chant, the more they like you. So I was just chanting all day, and everything. So I didn't realize then, but I realize now, and I realized soon after, what a great fortune that was. How Krishna helped me by destroying my so-called props and forcing me to surrender, and that's real mercy. So the alternative. Now, working in the hospital helped too, because I saw this, right what we're reading here. Working in that hospital, I saw so many people die. I'm confessing now, I think I may have even killed one guy inadvertently by giving him, he was a young guy, had a heart attack, and I gave him oxygen instead of, I gave him air instead of oxygen. I had these things in the wall in those days. It was just a few minutes. I mean, he didn't die right then, but I said, oh my God, he looks like it. Anyway, I hope I come back. What is it?
A lot of these things.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, iatrogenic, killed by medicine. Anyway, it is the whole business, and this is what this allegory is all about. This is kind of representing every man. That's who Puranjan is. This is the average thing that happens, and it's Maya's trick. She's very skillful. She's very skillful at tricking us into thinking that pleasure of the senses, pleasure of the mind, is really where it's at. That's how you can be happy in this world. And for each age, there's different pleasures. Toys R Us. I think they're out of business now, but little kids, they have there's a whole science of how to attract each. So, and you can go through your whole life that. Most people go through their whole life that way, and they're filled with so many disappointments. Sometimes huge disappointments. People who you love die, your children die, you yourself get some horrible disease. There's threefold miseries. The Adibautic miseries. I mean, there's other living entities, mostly other people, causing you misery. You can't get away from it. And so that's the downside. And it's all, exactly what you deserve, according to your karma. Previous activities. So this is what we've been going, the round, samsara chakra, around and around and around. So the whole idea of this allegory, as Srila Prabhupada is explaining it in the Bhagavatam, is to convince us this is a fool's errand. This is simply we're putting the wood on our own funeral pyre, so to speak. So, and then the question should arise: is there a way out? Is there a way out? And Krishna and his representatives comes, yes, there is a way out. We know you want to enjoy, but the enjoyment, this flickering enjoyment is just pathetic. You can enjoy much, much more. It's not that enjoyment itself is the problem. It's trying to enjoy the false enjoyment of this flickering enjoyment of sense gratification, both gross and subtle, which simply ties us up more and more in the web of illusion, in the web of this reaction. So understanding that, so this brings up, Rishabdev, which I can't resist. He's instructing his sons, and there's always a similar tack. He's going to leave, and he's giving them knowledge that's going to stand them in good stead, and they're going to set up the whole world, and rule the whole world on the basis of this knowledge. So the first thing he says, very strong words, which befits the guru, right? Krishna also says, you're a fool! You think you're a pundit speaking all these words, but you're lamenting for what's not worthy of grief. Once that relationship is set, that's really the guru's mercy. What is that? Santa eva sachindanti manovyasanga mukti. It's a verse that Krishna speaks in the 11th canto in the Uddhava Gita. Is that tato duk sangamutsraja satsu sajjeta buddhiman. Be intelligent. This comes after the Ila Gita, in which is a song of enunciation by Pururava. That's another story. So it says, duk sangamutsraja, kick it out, throw it far away. Bad association. That which simply is encouraging you to enjoy, to stay in illusion, which is giving you bad advice. Give it up and associate with devotees, pure devotees. Satsu sajjeta buddhiman. You have to be intelligent. You have to be, use your God-given intelligence in human form. And what's the value? Santa eva sachindandi manovyasangam uktibi. These saints, the gurus, they are able to destroy or cut out chindandi, this very impacted material desires in the mind, that we've developed for births. Munavyasam uktibi, by their words, which act like strong knives or swords. So that comes through Bhagavatam also. So much strong words. So this is Vrishabdev in the role of a guru, the father of the 100 sons, but there's many others also in this gathering. And the first thing he says, Nayam deho deya bhajang loke kashtang kamanarate vidbujangye. Vidbujangye. He says, Nayam, the soul who has attained a human form, the nirloke, in the human community. Kashtang kaman does not deserve to work very hard for material sense gratification, which is on the level of the stool-eating hogs. That's the level. We may polish it up and everything, but that's the same thing. What should we do then, Father? Tapo divyam. Putraka, O sons. Tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam shuddhyed. By this divine penance, it has to be qualified because there's austerity for the demons also. How do you think all these demons attack Krishna in all these different forms? They're all great yogis. Great austerity, with the purpose of getting the power, shape-changing power, so that they can do nefarious deeds. Austerity in itself is not something good. It's what it's used for. So therefore it says, tapo divyam. All those austerities which will purify your existence, sattvad shuddhyed yasmat, from which brahmasakyam tvanantam. You will become eligible to enjoy spiritual happiness. Brahmasakyam, which has a special quality, is anantam. It doesn't end. That's the whole point, is that this flickering material pleasure just leaves you with wanting it again and again, degrading yourself, burning out your senses, inviting disease with all of these extreme pleasures. In other words, it's a self-defeating and self-destroying enterprise. But that enjoying spirit is natural to us because Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. And so we can solve the problem of birth and death and get to the position of unending, unlimited, ever-increasing happiness by the process of bhakti yoga. But it begins with accepting this need for austerity. And that austerity is more or less starts with accepting those things that are favorable for devotional service and rejecting those things that are not. Two first elements of surrender. So that's, we're going to hear more and more about, the fate of Puranjan. He fights as hard as he can to stay in that body. Just like today, people spend extraordinary sums, to try to ward off time and stay. This guy Rockefeller died, I think, a couple of years ago now. He was over 100. One of the Rockefeller demons, these guys, the oil and all this stuff, But eventually, you got to face the music. You may try to put it off, Kissinger is also holding on with his other body, heart, had a heart transplant. I don't want to name names, but someday. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, let's bomb Cambodia. We don't care who's down there, women, children. This is the world we live in. So we want to get out, but before we get out, we want to take as many people as possible and give the mercy. That's the heart of the Vaishnav. You experience even a little bit of the blessings, what to speak of good portion of the blessing, and that's part of the purification. Is that it's part of dukkha dukhi, that you really do feel pain at others' pain and suffering. This is Prahlad's lesson, immortal lesson. I don't have any problem. Naibod vijay. I'm not disturbed. I'm not in any anxiety. Paradoratya Vaitaranyas. Because I'm already living with you, and you're on the other side of the Vaitarani river, means you're in the spiritual world in the Shringadev. So what's my problem? Tvadviya gayana mahamrita magna chitta. I can sing your powerful glories anywhere and dive into an ocean of bliss. That's what he's saying. But I am shoche, I am lamenting. Shoche vimukha chetasa, those who have turned their face away from you. This is a vimukha chetasa, their consciousness away. Maya sukhaya, they're bearing a great burden of trying to enjoy this flickering happiness. Maya sukhaya, illusory. Badam udvahato vimudhan, these foolish rascals. So what am I going to do about it? He explains in the next verse, which I won't cite, I'm not going to be like these selfish so-called transcendentalists who immediately leave the cities, go alone, and simply strive for their own so-called liberation, leaving everyone else behind. That's not Vaishnav, you know. He says, well, I first of all, if I can remember you, I'm already liberated. I don't have to go off somewhere. You know, liberation is a byproduct. But I'm going to stay in the big cities and try to help, you know. And I know that's more pleasing to, you know, to Krishna. So that's what we're reading here. You know, when we read these purports that Srila Prabhupada gave us in the translations, it's his effort, a tremendous effort that he undertook to produce these books, simultaneously traveling around the world, maintaining the temples, putting out so many fires, you know, dealing with things through letters, thousands of letters. Simultaneously, he's giving these books, which he said is his most important contribution. Exactly doing that, trying to penetrate the wall of illusion that we construct and give us good instruction so that we'll also be inspired to take up the process of bhakti, which he showed and proved is take-upable by anyone in the world. I heard this lecture just yesterday. You know, even, you know, the Africans and the Kiratuhunanda Pulinda Pushida. Doesn't matter where you are from. Even though, you know, the residents of the Bowery, they're as fallen as anyone. They can take it up. You know, that's shown by Lord Chaitanya. It's right in the Bhagavatam. There's no restriction. So it behooves us to pick up the practice of devotional service and also the mood of our line, which is very much sacrificing for preaching, for giving this treasure to others. And we have such a wonderful example in Vijay Prabhu, who dedicated his life to book distribution. Inconceivable to me, you know, the austerity. I've tried my hand a little bit at book distribution. I never got over that hump of you know, being happy at being, you know, rejected so much and tolerating that and developing, you know. But it's so I appreciate it that much more. What a sacrifice it is, you know. But you don't think Krishna appreciates that? You know, you just try to serve Vijay a little bit. You'll be paving your way back to Godhead. But seriously, you know, we're in this line, and Lord Chaitanya himself undertook, you know, Sukma austerity, preaching, going to South India, walking for 2 years, you know, and everywhere he went, he gave the holy name. You know, what is it? Was it 6 years? Oh, I thought it was 2 years he came back. But so that's, you know, what we find here. And as Prabhupada mentioned, he gives a real important warning here, and it's true for any kind of sense gratification, is that the more you indulge, you know, and make it more extreme, first of all, you kind of burn out. You know, I always give the analogy of drugs because it's an extreme example, but it applies to every kind of sense gratification. Prabhupada is talking about sex life. If you enjoy so much sex when you're young, then you're more likely to get more diseases when you get old, you know. And drugs, there's so much extreme, you know, pleasure at first, but you can destroy your life with that. You know, you're destroying your brain substance, your senses, you know. And I'm so thankful. You know, I was right in the middle of that in the late 60s in Lower East Side. And it's not that I never took any drugs. I smoked my share of marijuana, you know. But that was it. You know, it was all around me. The methamphetamine was coming in. The LSD was available everywhere. I remember I was sitting there alone, of all places. I would have gone crazy, with a couple of tabs of LSD. Shall I take it or not? Should I take it or not? I got this strong message. Don't take it. I mean, I didn't know about Krishna, but it says, no, I don't think again. Especially I'm all alone here. Who knows what would have happened? You know, where I would have gone. We had a you know, a fellow here. I think you remember him. You know, he had taken a lot of LSD, and he basically was always kind of tripping a little bit. You know, but he was fairly functional. I remember he would walk around the Tulsi and water Tulsi. He would do various services. You know. But at a certain point, it became untenable. The mind wouldn't let him in peace, you know. And he had some girlfriend who was always trying to pull him out, you know, and everything. It was tragedy. So Prabhupada, you know, immediately stopped that, you know. And then they came out with this flyer, you know, because everybody had taken drugs and everything. Stay high forever, you know. Prabhupada approved it, you know. That's the idea. Ramante yogano nante satyananda charabhini. because the yogis, the bhakti yogis, enjoy endless happiness, Rante yogi nante satyananda, with real bliss, real happiness. Therefore, the Krishna is also known by the name as Rama. Rama, the supreme enjoyer, the source of all bliss, the reservoir of pleasure. So this is our natural state. Our natural state is to never be unhappy, to always enjoy varieties of blissful exchange with Krishna eternally. And we can even experience that here, depending on our sincerity and our determination. Oh my God. Gone way over time. I'll just read the translation. The great sage Narada continued, "My dear King Prachinabharishat, afterward, the king of the Yavanas, whose name is fear itself, as well as Prajvara, Kalakanya, and his soldiers, began to travel all over the world." Any comments, questions? From abroad or from local? Otherwise, I'm going to throw a poem at you. I wrote one based on this verse by Rishabhdev. "Don't waste this precious human life, dear friend, by working hard for hoggish happiness. Through abnegation, worldly life transcend and learn to taste divine love's endless bliss." The abnegation can also be just bhakti yoga. Through bhakti yoga, worldly life transcend. Okay. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.